Welcome to Blacklight on Sports, hosted by veterans, MSR sports columnists, and reporters Dr. Mitchell McDonald and Charles Hallman. Tonight, our guest is who I see as the Dean of Twin Cities Black Broadcasters. Um, and she can dispute that if you want. But a woman who has definitely paid her dues and been in the business for a long time. Lea B Olsen, we really have to have you here tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me in, gentlemen.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
cool.
You know, I remember when you tried out for a show that was trying to pick talk show hosts.
Oh my God.
That's how long that
That
was.
was a
I
long
remember
time
that,
ago.
yes. If you could share just briefly about why would you do something like that and how that propelled you to where you at today.
Well, it was a national contest that I came across that Ed McMahon from The Tonight Show was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you just sent in a reel and you talked about if you had a talk show, what would it be about and what would it be like? And so I did it and I sent it in. And so I was one of the finalists and they sent me out to New York City and I got to hang out there for like a week with the other contestants. And then we all had to interview somebody and I made it to the last five. And then they ended up picking a guy who had a show, his own show for about a year before it got canceled. But so it was just kind of a really super cool experience. But I knew that I was going to be in broadcasting and I was really focused on sports broadcasting. But then
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity came up. So I thought I would at least go for it.
But you, I
So.
mean, you have to be working 20, 12 months out the year because you go from one season to another.
Yeah.
Do you get a break anytime because you have other things that I know that you're doing? You're a mother, you're a wife,
Yeah.
but you always seem to be visible, which is that's why I call you the dean of black
Yeah.
broadcasters because your visibility, people see you all the time.
Well, it's been interesting because since our two teams, NBA, WNBA teams, have been playing good basketball, their seasons crossed paths this year. So, and when I was working with the Timberwolves and we went into the playoffs, then literally those seasons crossed paths. So then I jumped off Timberwolves and went over to Lynx, and then the Lynx, I broadcast for about 35, 40 games for them this summer, and then them making it to the finals brought me into the Timberwolves season, and so next week I'll go to Sacramento for my first Timberwolves game.
Mhm.
So there's not really a break in that, but within those seasons, there's some breaks. And the other things that I like to do is a lot of speaking, and I like to speak to corporate America and youth groups and sports groups around my platform, Rethink the Win. And so I try to make sure there's time to fit that in. And then, a little time to be a wife and a mom to the grown kids. Yeah.
I saw you handle, I think might been one of your best jobs when you interviewed Don Staley
Oh,
over at
thank
St.
you.
Catherine. I mean, that was just, I mean, because she could talk, you could
Yeah.
see that. But she handled anything you asked her. She was able to give you something that really it wasn't no yes or no. It wasn't no. How was that experience of just talking with her and sharing that stage with her? I mean, that could have went on for hours, and
I
trying to
agree.
put that in for.
It was an honor. I was so excited when they called me and asked if I would be interested. And I was like, Don Staley. And what was interesting about Don Staley is I have probably met every woman in women's basketball because I've been, in the game since 1999
Mm-hmm.
when we got a team here. And then I did ESPN for 5 years. So I was traveling around. And so I've met almost everyone, but I had never met Don Staley. And so I was really excited to meet her. And, because she was just coming off a championship and she's just like at the top of her game, and the way that she uses her voice in leadership is super cool to watch. So I do a lot of like watching how she leads and how she leads as a black woman. Um and I really believe that she's probably one of those coaches that other coaches, men and women, look at to see how she's going to handle a tough situation because of what she's been through. So I was just thrilled to have the opportunity to interview her, and it wasn't long enough. And she's just one of those very real people that is not going to just give you a basic answer. She's going to give you the truth and give you a funny story and tell you all about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so um, I wished we would have had like another hour to kind of hear more about um, her views and her philosophy and how the game is changing and all of the stuff. But it was great having an hour with her.
Yeah, it was good. JC Rose is a young lady I've been covering since day one because she's the only black golfer in the
Okay.
MIAC as well as on St. Catherine's. And so she's been very active in there. So she was picked to
Yes.
be the introduction.
Yes.
And so
Yeah, she
that was
did a
her
great
first
job.
time meeting her. Oh, she did a great job. But she's a very good. And St. Catherine has won like three league championships, and
Okay.
they've been to NCAA like four times, and she's been on that team.
I love that.
And she was rookie of the year, freshman year. So so just seeing her in action was very. And she
Yeah.
said she was so nervous. She said that Dom made her be calm, just
Yeah.
told her just go out there and do your job. And so Don coached her, just
Yeah.
for just a second or two.
Mhm.
So
That is what's amazing about Dawn Staley is she's willing to be kind of a teacher and a coach to everybody, because she's coaching for the bigger purpose of what it's for. I mean, obviously she wants her team to win championships, but she has a bigger purpose when she's coaching, and it is to support women and help, in particular, the world see Black women in a positive light, and has had to deal with people coming at her players and radio personalities, talking about her players. Well, they went when that Rutgers situation happened, she wasn't coaching at Rutgers, but she stepped into that situation to help kind of advocate for those sisters. So she's just one of those people that really is good at kind of seeing the bigger purpose of how we are doing this together.
you, a graduate of South High School, talk
Yes,
about
sir.
just your travel from growing up on the South Side to where you at today. Talk about that.
Well, I love the South Side. My parents, well, my mom passed away in February, but my they still live in the house. My dad does that we grew up in across the street from Powderhorn Park. Um, I've watched the neighborhood change, and so it's just a place that I feel safe and comfortable in. And South High was just a really super positive experience for me. Had good coaches, good teachers, and I felt like people cared about you there. And so have had a good connection with them, have still stayed connected to the teams over there, the basketball teams at least, and trying to help serve those young athletes coming through. Even though this, school has changed a lot, the demographic has changed a lot, it's still doing that work that city schools have to do in serving all of the kids. And so I'm trying to be supportive to them, but it gave me the background that I needed to play in college, to be successful in college. South prepared me for that. And so I found that my public school education was very, very good, and it allowed me to be successful at the University of Minnesota at Minneapolis Community College, where I went before that. And then when I kind of moved into the sports broadcasting world. So, um, yeah, super grateful for that foundation. And like I talk a lot about, because I didn't play youth sports when I was younger, because I didn't go to a school that had sports. And so I was a 6'1", 12-year-old girl running around who everyone was like, "What team are you on?" And I wasn't on a team.
Hmm.
And so when I went over to South, the coach there at the time, his name was Gordy Halloran, he was like, "Okay, I'll teach you the game." So literally that was my first team that I played on. And so his commitment to help me kind of extra stay on weekends, do all that thing really helped me become a good player, and which kind of paved the way for me. So super grateful for that.
So, rethink the win. How did you come up with that?
Well, that came from my kids being participating in youth sports. And I was just really shocked. Like the first time my daughter was playing volleyball, and we went to a game in Rochester, and there was a mom yelling at a line judge, and the line judge was a 13-year-old girl. And I was like shocked that nobody was doing anything about it. And then everyone afterwards was like, "Oh, that's just kind of the norm." And then the more games I started attending, the more I realized that the environment that these athletes are trying to succeed in was oftentimes very negative, very toxic. And yet we want our kids to have this positive experience in sports, yet as adults we're not creating environments for them to thrive in. And so it really bothered me. So I came up with Rethink the Win to try and get players and coaches and athletes to rethink winning and what does it mean to win. And so like, just participating, being involved, being active, learning how to be a good teammate, learning discipline from your coaches, all of those things that why we want our kids to participate in sports is what we have to remember. We all want to win. I understand that. But like we've taken it now so far that we've kind of lost the balance on that. And um, so that's kind of where it started. And then I realized, who else could rethink the win? It's corporate America. So I kind of created a platform to bring to corporate America that just trying to get them to see that you have to treat people well and you can't just run over people and you have to pay people and like those type of things. So yeah, that's where it came from. And it's youth sports now is a year-round highly paid industry. It's like a
Yeah.
$10 billion industry, and people are making so much money off of young athletes that I just think people need to be really careful and they need to protect the youngest athletes who are coming through.
Now, when did you realize that broadcasting was what you wanted to do? Was there a moment, when you were
Yeah.
like, you know what, this is it?
Yeah, I was in the locker room when I was at Minneapolis Community College, and I kept asking my teammates stuff, and I would be like, "Okay, tell me about." I always like to know everybody's background, how you got here, when did you? And they were like, "Leah's like interviewing everybody," and I was like, I just thought I was being nosy, but it turned out I was really trying to like. That's one of my favorite things about sports is like I love that everyone brings a different story with them, and everyone, even though it's the same game, plays it a little bit different based on where they come from and who they are and what their childhood was like. And so when I got to the University of Minnesota, that's when I thought I'll be a journalism, mass communications major. And then I didn't really know how to get into it because there was no clear path back then. And I didn't see anybody I knew who was any women doing it. So I just thought I'll get a job in sports and I'll hope to get into broadcasting. And so I got an internship with the Timberwolves in working with their summer basketball camps. And then eventually they moved me into corporate part of their marketing department and then eventually moved me into broadcasting. So, kind of a curvy road to get there, but that was the only way I really knew how to do it.
Now, how long have you been broadcasting?
Let's see here. So, well, the Lynx came in 99, so I was doing it a couple years before then, so probably about 28 years. Yeah.
You've seen a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seen a lot, and that's why it's fun to see some winning now. I mean,
Yeah.
although,
Yeah.
I have to say, like with the Lynx, of course, we had winning, and so
Hmm.
um, that was one of the best things is like because I had been working with the Timberwolves, and I like watching. One thing I like about sideline reporting is you sit in that huddle, and you get to see how the coaches interact and how they call plays in a really under a lot of, because it's quick and it's loud and you kind of get everyone's styles. And I really learned a lot about this. Like, Kevin McHale was like really super good at practices where he had time and he always made the game super easy for the players. So they all really liked him. But like in timeouts, he took too much time. So sometimes the coaches would move him out of the way and like, we'll tell you what to do. Cause you don't have a lot of time in a huddle where Flip had his own style and Dwayne Casey had his own style. And so it was just kind of fun seeing how everyone did it a little bit differently. And then um, with the Lynx, obviously it was fun watching because the level of talent was so high. Even though, now when we see the WNBA, the talent is at such a different level than it was back then. But,
Hmm.
we had a team full of Hall of Famers. So we had some great players, obviously.
There's always been some concern about sideline reporting.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes are you doing something, are you invading, and then are you getting
Yes.
anything from that? Because, during a game, do a coach have the time to really tell you something? So explain to us
What?
how you try to get the best at the time. You only have a minute, maybe
Yeah.
less than a minute,
Usually less. Yeah.
you know.
It's a great question. And I think one of the things that we just saw during the WNBA playoffs was that ESPN was going into the huddles while the coaches were trying to coach. And I think everyone found that to be incredibly invasive, and the coaches didn't like it. And they're trying to coach under stressful situations. And then we're asking them questions about how's it going? Like that didn't, I'll be surprised if they bring that back again, because I saw, on the internet, it was everyone was hating on it a lot. So, but in general, I think, for sideline reporting, the point of it is that you're trying to give people at home a little piece of information that they can't get because they're not at the game. They haven't been to shoot around, they haven't been to practice. So you may have some information for them that is kind of interesting or valuable or helps them see the game differently. But you're supposed to get that information out like within 30 to 45 seconds. So, and every kind of team does it a little bit different. Some people use that position more a little bit as an analyst. Other people just like more fluffy stuff of tell us what the team did today. Did they go do something in the community? All of that. The Wolves, they kind of do a mix of huddle hits. They want you to get some information out of that huddle to give, like that's a big deal to them. And in that, you just have to be careful because you're not supposed to give away what they're doing in the huddle, but you're supposed to come out with, what's the general vibe and feel of what's happening in there. And then like throughout, like before a game, we'll kind of talk about what are the storylines of the game. So like next week I'll be going to Sacramento. That will be my first game, and we'll probably be heavily talking about they're coming off that first game in LA. What happened there? Have they gotten a win yet? And all of those things. And so you kind of have some themes that you go into the game with, and then you create like a first quarter hit off of, let's say, the Wolves are looking for their first win tonight, and then talk to some players at shoot around, try to build on the story, bring in some stats around whatever that may be. And then you kind of build a little story that way. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't love the role because people feel like it's just full of fluff and it doesn't necessarily add to the game. And I think it's just kind of is based on the philosophy of each broadcast and how much you're willing to give to it, because you can get good information, and you can get some information that may be interesting to people that they wouldn't get normally. It's just kind of depends on how much your group is into that position and how much they believe in the reporter.
Now, this year you basically had bookend successful seasons. I mean, the Timberwolves made a run to the conference finals.
Yep.
You had the Lynx, who nobody thought was going to even get in the playoffs, let alone get to the finals and make it a historic showing.
Yes.
Talk about just the experiences of doing these two teams this season, because they definitely brought a lot of excitement to the Target Center that hadn't been there
I
in
know.
quite a while.
It's really been remarkable to see the changes. And one thing I understand now from being around these two teams for so long is leadership matters, and that leadership comes from the top. And when you have good general managers, which both sides have right now, they bring in the right people, you start getting the right players, and then the coaches really set the tone. And so I just happen to think I'm a huge fan of both Coach Reeve and Coach Finch. They're both just great basketball minds, yet they're really good people relationship builders. I'll say that because one thing that I learned from Coach Reeve is she told me that being a head coach is 95% relationship building, 5% strategy. And I think we all think you spend so much time doing the X's and O's and all of that. And she's like, it's really trying to manage personalities and getting connected to people so they're willing to do difficult things for you, and they have to know that you trust them and they trust you. And like there's just a lot that goes into that. And so that's been really cool to see how she does that. And then Coach Finch has a completely different style, obviously. But boy, those young players just love him. Like he has a really cool way of being with them that he's not intimidating. I think like when Tibbs was here, he had that more powerful, intimidating thing. but he could hold the room, you know, like they respect him, but it's on a little bit different level than some other coaches that I've seen. So it's pretty interesting to watch how they build those relationships. But boy, it's been pretty exciting to see these two teams kind of lift to that next level. And there's I mean, they put a lot into it, you know.
And they both are led by young people.
Yeah,
I mean, Anthony Edwards, we keep forgetting he's not even 25.
I know.
And then Napisha, who was always seemed to want to be in the shadow, she was, if it wasn't for Asia Wilson, she would have been MVP this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It just,
she had a breakout
just
year.
had those.
I'm so happy that the rest of the world was able to see how good Nafisa Collier is, because sometimes I think because she's more reserved and quiet and she doesn't jump on social media and use her voice in a way that other people do. And I'm totally in support of other people doing that. It's just not her style. I think a lot of times people just don't see her. And then because we're a Minnesota team, people weren't paying attention. And so I thought the Olympics was really good for her because people got to see her and people started talking. That was the first time I saw national people like going, "Oh, this Nafisa Collier is something special." You know, we knew that before, but she has steadily gotten better and better and better, and her consistency is pretty amazing. Like,
Yeah, she really broke out this year
yeah,
for sure.
and I mean, she'll fill up that stat line across the board. Like she will figure out a way to help her team. I think like her footwork is probably she probably has the best footwork in the WNBA. I mean, she can take a move and she can take a bigger player and get through them, and it's just so much finesse. And so I love that about her. But I think, you know, now, like, I'm not sure if that MVP is always going to be tough because she's going to kind of be going in right along with Asia Wilson, you know. But I was really happy that she got Defensive Player of the Year. And I thought it was super well deserved. And I thought we saw that in the playoffs that just what a great defender she can be.
But I think that when they after the season she had and how far the Lynx went, that they're going to look at her differently now.
I think so
And
too.
I mean, I just think that's the way it is now because she was in the Olympics, but then she led a team like you said, Charles. She led a team. I mean, we were making plans about what we were going to do after the season was over, like what me and Charles were going to cover, and then all of a sudden I'm like, man,
They're going to be there. Yeah.
they're in the finals. Like,
It's wild.
we had to rearrange
Yeah.
our schedule.
Well, I thought Becky Hammon, the head coach of the Aces, said it the best. She was like, Minnesota has good players, great team. And that's really what they are. I mean, Nafisa Collier is an elite player. Everybody else is a good player who played up this year.
That's true.
And even next year, I think will be really interesting because every one of those starters was playing above their season, you know. So can they, you know, can you keep that?
Can you keep that up? You know, do you as you think back on your career, do you know any memorable moments like people you interviewed that you never forget that like you had that chance or you were there and you were like, boy, this person did this and I got to interview him or her.
Yeah.
Do any stand out?
Well, probably for my very first interview ever was with Kevin Garnett. So I always thought that was a good way to start things off. And Kevin Garnett did what, you know, I'm sure he still remembers making fun of this, but he was in the locker room and I was out in front of the locker room waiting for him. And there was a camera on me so he could see me waiting. And so he was like, I'm just gonna let her wait and wait and wait. And so like an hour later, I'm still like, my first interview, you know, like, you know. So he finally came out and looked at me and was like, "Are you ready to do this thing?" And so that was pretty cool. I have a picture of that. And I think KG was, as you remember, like he was always worth waiting for because his stuff was always super original. Like he always wanted to have something different than everybody else said. So like some days you spent so much time waiting for him. You know, that's why I love when everyone always thinks the job is so glamorous and everything. And then like, you know, you spend most of your day waiting outside of a locker room for an athlete to come out. You know what I mean? But so I always loved that one. When I was doing ESPN, I did a lot of fun ones. I was able to interview Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
They came to a WNBA game in New York, and it was super funny because um, all the Secret Service was there, and they had like 400 things I couldn't ask. You can't ask about this, and you can't ask about Monica Lewinsky, and you can't. And I was like, so and so they had so many things that I couldn't ask about that when I finally started the interview, I was like I kind of like blanked out, and I was like, and then I was like, so because he was just out of office, and Hillary, I think, was a senator still, and he was just out of office, and I was like, so you're so young and out of office, what's next? And he just started laughing. He was like, what is next for me? And so it ended up working out, but I kind of like panicked because I was like, I can't ask him something that I'm not supposed to ask him, you know.
Oh, wow.
But so that was pretty exciting. Um, I like, I think all those years with all those great Lynx players, we just got so spoiled of having these, just incredible Hall of Famers all around. But I think Maya Moore just always stands out. One thing about, I just interviewed her when she was in town after they put her number up in Target Center. And she speaks just so eloquently, and she's so thoughtful on everything she says that, like, she doesn't give you just basic answers. And so it's really, I just really enjoy interviewing her because it's very deep, it's very thoughtful, and she is someone that's like anything that she does it big. And so like that's always been just one of my favorite people to talk to in general. Just for her knowledge and her sense of purpose. And
Okay. Now, the one I remember,
okay. Oh yeah.
okay, the one I remember was when, and I looked up, and after it was after a game, and I looked up and I saw you interviewing him, and I'm like, man, is she lucky? I think Derrick Rose had like 50 points,
Yeah, you're
and
right.
he had been through the injuries and all that, and I mean, and then he balled out, and then I know, me and Charles were sitting there, and then afterwards, and then we heard your voice, and I was like, I said, is she interviewing Derrick Rose? I was like,
Yeah.
interviewing Derrick Rose, and then
That's
and it was you, and I said, wow, what a
that was an
what a moment to see that.
that was the most watched interview ever out of the Minnesota Timberwolves because it went, and where it what's so interesting, it went viral because of Derrick Rose,
Mm-hmm.
because he was crying really, really hard before the interview started, and my producers couldn't see that I could see that and so they were like, Leah, start the interview, and I was like, no, I'm gonna let Derrick have his moment. So what they ended up doing was then they just showed the crowd while we were kind of waiting for him, and the crowd was giving him a standing ovation, and he was crying. And then I love because when I asked him, I was like, what did this mean to you? And then he said, how did he say it again? He said, I worked my blank off, bro. And everyone loved that he called me bro. And so but but it was just like so so it went viral, and then it became, at the end of the season, it became the NBA moment of the year at
Mm-hmm.
their awards. And so that was, yeah, so that was a really cool thing too. But then my kids tell me that the interview lives on, like in TikTok and a few other spaces,
Oh yeah,
where it just keeps going and living on
yeah,
and living on. And it's kind of like the one with Carl Anthony Towns. That one kind of lives on its own too, where he says this is what movies are made of. Um, yeah, so sometimes these things have their own life, but
yes,
you're right, that Derek one was special because of, like, you don't often get an athlete who's that emotional, and it was like
yeah,
there was so much meaning in that for him after all his struggles and injuries and the pain, and then he has this 50-point night. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Now, how much has social media affected the job that you do?
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'm older, so I would prefer not to do it, but it is part of the job, and so there is an expectation that you will post when you're doing things, you'll post interviews, you'll post what you're doing that day, to support the broadcast, to support the work, to support all of it. So, um, it has really changed it. And I think the positive part about it is if you're new and you're coming into broadcast, you can really start your own thing right on your own
Mm-hmm.
page, and you could come to a game and do a little broadcast all by yourself, and you could, create something on your own that would have, we would have never had that opportunity
No.
to do something like that. So if done right, I think it gives a lot of people a voice and a lot more people opportunities to get in. Obviously, we see a lot of other issues that come from it. And I think, like, to me, the part that I hate the most is not so much around my work stuff because most people are just cool with that, but like just kind of like for in the WNBA this year, just like how so many people have just been attacked for just being who they are and the people they are, and just negative people in the world who are just coming at them on their social media. I think that's really a difficult space to be in. And that's the part I really dislike about it, that like, and I don't understand why it's okay. Like, why can't your account be taken off if you say something like that to someone? Like, if you were to say that to me in person, right? I could like file charges against you or something, right? But like, you can say whatever you really want on the internet, So there's a lot of there's pros and cons to it, but the bottom line is it's here to stay. So,
That's true.
and it's an expectation of the job now. Yeah.
Now you do public speaking.
Yes, sir.
What makes you be a effective public speaking? Do you get butterflies? Do those things come into play, or you've done it so much now that it becomes just a natural?
Yeah. Well, I
You,
think for me, like even like when I played ball or even when I'm doing a broadcast or if when I'm speaking, I always kind of get the butterfly piece. And I think that is just like the sense that like I'm excited, I want it to be good, you get a little nervous and then you go. And so I definitely feel that still to this day. I I try to use all my speaking stuff in a really positive space that can help and serve people. So it's kind of trying to, like, I talk a lot about my background um, and kind of growing up in a blended family and growing up poor and growing up with in divorce, but having a family that was there that very supportive with a lot of love, and just kind of the importance of those things even when other things are different than everybody else's, when you have these basic things of people who love you and support. And like for my mom, it was always like, you just education is the way out. Those type of things really, really, I think are my message to other people. And so I try to bring that message of positivity to everybody, because I feel like everyone just has so much negative from the news sources and all the different spaces. And so that feels like to me like what my role is supposed to be, kind of the encourager. And so yeah, but yeah, I still get like excited and more than nervous, kind of like anxious, like to get up there and do it, and I want to do a good job. And so yeah, so I still kind of get those butterflies.
Now,
you,
oh, go ahead.
have you given up on hosting a talk show?
You know what? I haven't given up. I could see that maybe being retiring from Timberwolves and Lynx,
Mm-hmm.
and now let's have some conversations, maybe in a different space. I could see doing something like that. So I'm going to say we haven't put that to rest yet.
Now, how important is it to you um, for young women and young men to see you in your position? I mean, do you think about that? Do you think about that? People are watching me. I'd like to be a good example. I'd like
Yeah.
to encourage people that to let them know that they can end up where I am or even further.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that when
I
you're
do think
broadcasting?
about it, and I do a fair amount of informational interviews with young people who are trying to get into the business. I'm happy to do that to help them. It's not an easy business to get into. Um, and I think, we talk a lot about that. You got to see it to be it and all of those things. I believe strongly in that. Like, if you don't see people who look like you doing things, you start thinking you can't do those things.
Right.
And so I do like to, like, I was leaving the Lynx game, their last home game at Target Center, and a young woman came up to me and she was like, Oh my God, I've been watching you for so long, and you're an idol of mine, and like I take that really seriously. Like that one, it makes me really happy that someone young knows me because I'm older. um, and yeah, and I think that is kind of part of the responsibility of the job, and um, so I think it is a pretty big deal. And now, and I, what I'm really, really excited about is like, if you look at, let's look at the ESPN's broadcast of the finals and you look at that hosting
Mhm.
position and all those
Yes.
sisters sitting up there, that wasn't
Yes,
the way it
yes.
was when we got to this game, and
Very true.
so that, and those women are outstanding. I've worked with most of them. They're, the top of the best. And so, um, I just think like, you have us who came really early, and I hate to say pioneer because it sounds so old, but right. But that
Mhm.
was like when I was in it, there just wasn't hardly anyone else in it. And I always tell this story when I first started doing work with ESPN, Robin Roberts was working at ESPN then, and she
Mhm.
was like, here's how you got to show up. And she said to me, now she also is the reason why I use Lea B Olsen as a name, because I was going with my maiden name and my married name, which was Lea Bergen Olsen. And
Mhm.
then she was like, "Are you gonna keep that big long name?" And I was like, and then I was like, "Yeah, that is kind of long, isn't it?" I was like, "Leah, what about Lea B Olsen?" She's like, "That's what I like." And I was like, whatever she liked, I was doing. so
Mhm.
so that's where that came from.
Wow.
But yeah, so I do think it's important. And as we all know, like, it is just good to see more sisters and brothers doing this work now.
Any any people you remember who influenced you, who you might have looked up to and said, "I want to do it," or they helped you along the way? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, really not that many outside of Robin Roberts, because I just didn't know that many. And I had,
Mhm.
so like, it just wasn't at that time, there wasn't a ton of women in it.
Mhm.
And like, even like for me watching sports, I watched mainly, men's sports growing up. So I just didn't have that type of role model influence for me. Um, but now I think it's pretty fair to say that, young women have the pickings of
Mhm.
basketball players. And you see coaches, you're seeing officials, you're seeing broadcasters, people at all different spaces,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Now, going back to your foundation and the Rethink the Win, how impactful the transfer portal issue and NIL, how much that going to have having an impact,
Mhm.
or if it haven't, going to have an impact on young people playing sports, when some people are thinking that that's making kids even be more selfish because they're trying to get their name
Mhm.
out, and the team seems to suffer from that. If it's a team sport, individual sport,
Yeah,
doesn't matter in such a way. But we had a coach just last week left because he couldn't deal with
yeah.
the NIL stuff anymore. He
It's
couldn't
tough.
deal with it.
I feel so bad for the coaches right now. Like, most of them, including the ones at the University of Minnesota, they did not sign up for this, and it changed while they were there. Ben Johnson and Dave Thorson, those guys, they do a great job with young people, and they got there right when it turned into NIL. And really, what it's about now is it's about fundraising. It's about trying to help them with this, but that's really what it is you have to get boosters to give money so you can get kids that you want. And there's this, it will settle down eventually, because we are at just the front end of something that's just brand new. I am I'm very much for it, because if you think of the billions of dollars that would be made on the backs of these young athletes, and they weren't getting any of it. But so I'm super happy that the people getting paid are the athletes. It's blown up college sports, which I think is hard for us to watch, especially because I love college sports. But I think it will settle in eventually, and it'll find a new way of being.
Mhm.
Um, it's just that it's still kind of the wild, wild west, and things aren't settled yet. And I was just watching a show on Netflix or something about have you guys watched that? It's like the NIL money game, and it's, Angel and um, the gymnast Dunn, I think. And,
Mhm.
and those are the rare ones because they're making millions, or they were when they were in college. Um, but you know, there are some. I do think it's really difficult for teams. But in a way, teams have always had a hierarchy of who's the best and all of those types of things. So I think the hardest part for college sports right now is that nobody's staying on teams. It's just that everybody's like transferring to find something better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hopeful now that eventually the money is going to come from the conference. Um, then it can kind of settle back in that you don't have to move so much, that you could stay on your team and know that you're going to get paid from the conference. That's eventually going to be the next step, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different.
It's
Missed out on
different.
the high paying years, that's for sure.
And you also missed the opportunity to play in the WNBA because
That's right. I
WNBA came in several years after you had finished your college career.
Yeah, I was working with the Timberwolves when 1999 when the WNBA came, and they actually said, because they had a public tryout right
Mhm.
now. That was just more of a kind of marketing thing, but they did ask me to try out for the team, which I would have, but I was pregnant with my daughter Jada, so now I can say like, oh yeah, I probably would have made the team. Yeah. But it is wild if you think about the level of the game since then to now is incredibly different. I
Oh,
mean, and that's really about the athletes playing all the time, and they're bigger, stronger, faster. The things that we're seeing and like this next group coming out, Juju and these Paige Beckers is, I mean, it's just
yeah. It's
amazing
more of a
the
it's more of
skills.
a year round. It's more of
Yeah.
a year round deal.
Yeah, we weren't doing that. We
No,
played a
no, we played and then we stopped and then we went to the next season and then
exactly.
I mean, but we weren't going to gyms working out or anything like that. Man, we were running around the neighborhood having fun after
Yeah.
whatever.
I'll say that, like, because I just went over to do some media trading with the women Gophers, and I will say that as envious as I am, when you see like all the stuff that they have in the athletes' village and this and
Yes,
that,
yes,
the places they stay. The one thing I'm envious that we had is like we had some time for ourselves.
Mhm.
yeah,
We had time to have a college experience. They basically go year round
yeah.
there, and there's like a 2 week window, I think, where people get to disappear and go home, but otherwise you are, on campus doing something. And
No,
so,
no, like yeah, no, that's interesting because when I went to Central State University for my undergrad, and I remember we had intramural basketball, and I remember the football team winning all the intramural basketball championships. But they got to do that. That's not what's happening today. They're working all they're working all
exactly.
year round, and I still remember that because I'm sitting there like, man, they won again.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
they
But
just
not
kept
anymore. Yeah.
yeah, but they don't. But I'm pretty sure I go back even there. I'm pretty sure I go back there now. No, you ain't playing no basketball,
No.
man. You got to train
Yeah.
for next year or what have you.
Yeah. And then, I think we just always have to be careful because this group of athletes coming through, they have more like depression and anxiety than any group of athletes. And
True.
they tend to see sports
Mm,
psychologists at way younger ages. That used to kind of just be something you might do in college. Now they're doing it like in fifth grade. So
mm,
there's some stress and negative things that can come from playing year round. I just think you have to be careful with that.
yeah.
Now, have we about 4 years out from when the world stopped
Hmm.
for a virus, global virus. Um, have we now got to a point where the virus is always going to be with us? Where have we got to a point with all the precautions, all the safeguards that's put in, that you can do your job effectively? You can go talk to athletes without having to worry about
Yeah.
distance and have to worry
Yeah, that
about,
was so
or
wild.
or you can't go in or can you go in the locker room, or you can't go in the locker room, those are, have it settled down in a sense where now you can do your job and still get the kind of contact and kind of
Yes.
you know
It's all returned to normal once again. And there was, it was kind of went in 6 month intervals where kind of we were slowly moving back in, when it was still going on, whatever, in 22, I guess, we were still masked up and we were like maybe sitting next to each other with a panel between us and things like that. And um, they were really lockdown practices and didn't let anyone in. Everyone was vaccinated. You had to be vaccinated. Um, so there was a lot. And then you just, the more we move away, just slowly, I don't even really know if they still do it at all, like even have a COVID protocol. I'm not actually even sure how the teams handle that anymore because, some people, I don't think they're testing for it anymore. But yeah, there was a lot. That was a lot. And some good things came from it that we realized, well, you can do broadcasts. You don't have to be in the city with the team.
Mhm.
Um, that's good and bad. But for the Lynx, it was good because Lynx couldn't afford to travel broadcasters. So when we had away games, we just go to the studio in downtown Minneapolis and
Mhm.
do the broadcast on a TV from downtown, and it's not an optimal way to do a broadcast, but you certainly can do one. So I think that came out of COVID as something that was like okay to do now. But yeah, so I'm glad we're out of that. That was a tough time.
And also, advent of Zoom.
Yes.
I used to make a joke. Only time I knew about Zoom was it was a hit song by the Commodores.
Or
Uh,
who's zooming? Who?
but now, you don't have to go anywhere. I mean,
I know.
I got Zoom every day. I could go on a Zoom call every day during the finals to talk to
Yeah, remember
players or
that?
talk to you. You couldn't do that. You had to be there to do
Yeah,
that. Okay, but now you almost anything you can
you can
basically
still get a
you
Zoom.
still get a Zoom
Yeah, I
if
heard.
you're a credentialed reporter.
Yeah, if you're credentialed, you can get on the Zoom. And that was one of the things that was a big conversation afterwards is should they keep that Zoom aspect of it? And I think everyone agreed that they should at least have because you want more people covering the games. And so if you are credentialed media member, but in another state and you want to cover links, you should have access. Um, so now, yeah, now you have the live, in the room with the coaches and players, and then you have the Zoom part of it. And yeah, that's just become a norm.
Yeah, I was able to ask the commissioner a question.
Did you ask her why she had that dress on?
No, that's
No.
no, I'm not a fashion reporter, so no.
Oh my goodness.
We always offer our guests an opportunity to speak to our listeners and our viewers, and share with them something that they think that they could take with them wherever they go. We also call it pearls of wisdom, and
Okay.
so we allow you that opportunity to
Thank you.
do that as well.
Well, I'll take it from my Rethink the Win platform and say to people that we have a strong community here, but you create the community. You make it strong by creating spaces and environments that are safe, that are fun, that are exciting. But we have to create that. They just don't create themselves. So if it's for sports, for your athletes, if it's in a schoolroom, if it's just a place where you're gathering to hang out, create environments that can serve our community. And so I think about that a lot, that we actually do have control about that. All of us in this room can create that. We created a space here tonight that's cool to hang out and talk hoops and sports. And if we can get more people to do that and create more safe spaces, and I think that's how you can build um, an even stronger, better community.
Well, we want to thank you
Thank you.
for being here. We want to thank everyone for watching. Um, I'm I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald.
I'm Charles Hallman, and thank you for joining Blacklight on Sports. And please tune in and read us as well in the MSR. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.